Sumit with us. So he is a UX designer by profession, but passionate about animation and storytelling. Sumit is currently working as a visual designer at Tata Consultancy Services, Mumbai. His key areas of interest are filmmaking, visual storytelling, experimental animation techniques, and ethnic crafts. Few films that he has done that include Who Ate My Apple 2019, Ek Cup Chaha 2019, Ankahi 2018, and Aftaran 2017. He has done his Master of Design from Department of Design IIT Hyderabad with a specialization in visual designing. The talk he's going to present touches upon the process of making of the animation short film Ek Cup Chaha, One Cup of Tea, from the point of view of design, filmmaking, and a personal take on experience of working with experimental mediums. It will also highlight the to-dos for aspiring students, filmmakers who are about to venture into the world of film festivals, national and international. Some highlights about Ek Cup Chaha is it has received 20 nominations and has won 14 awards in the student animation category for Best Animation, Best Direction, and Best Editing. Some key awards being Ram Mohan Weaver's Choice Award and a special mention jury award at AnyFest organized by the Animation Society of India. Recently, Ek Cup Chaha was also acknowledged by TCS on their worldwide official communication channels. Thanks, Sumit, for accepting our invitation and sharing your design story with all of us. Now it's over to you.
Thank you, Ankana, for the introduction. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you for the sweet introduction. Hi, all. My name is Sumit. And like you can see on the screen, today's topic of the talk would be storytelling and experimental animation. Behind the scenes, I'll be using my reference as a film, Ek Cup Chaha, which I have made. Quickly going through the structure of the film. So today, structure of the talk. Today's talk is structured like it's structured in 4 parts. First half would be more focused towards the thinking part of it, which is the storytelling, the art of storytelling, and few tips here and there about that. Then we'll have quickly have the screening of the film. It's a 3-minute film, short film. So we'll have the screening, and then we'll move on to the second half where I would talk a little bit about the animation technique used, the filmmaking process, which is overall the execution part of it. And towards the end, we'll quickly have a Q&A if there are any questions. So one thing I would like to focus on is the entire talk would be more focused from a student filmmaking point of view because that's the kind of experience that I have. I have not yet delved into the commercial cinema. So anything and everything that I say is heavily from the perspective of student filmmaking. So I'll move ahead to the first half, which is storytelling. And as you can see in the image, there are 2 people who have some thoughts. One is jumbled, one is organized. So what exactly happens in storytelling? So storytelling is all about the inception point of storytelling becomes thoughts. So when I think of thoughts, there is a quote that comes to my mind, and it's from a favorite person. The quote says, "Where does a thought go when it is forgotten?" by Sigmund Freud. And where does a thought go when it's forgotten? It's by Sigmund Freud. And the answer is I don't know. Honestly, this is one quote which tells me the importance of thoughts and the reason why it is important to conserve every thought that you get in your mind and process them and respect them. Because if I don't know what happens to a thought when it is forgotten, but I definitely do know that thoughts lead to ideas and ideas lead to stories, and stories eventually manifest into reality for creating meaningful experiences. And that is exactly what is the goal of storytelling, right? I mean, to make somebody feel and realize something that you have thought of, something that you have experienced, and translate the same experience to a larger audience and make them feel the same. So that's also one of the main goals of storytelling. So when did it all begin? Like, so once upon a time, so this is a picture of one of the primitive cave paintings. So it can be dated that storytelling actually takes origin back then. Probably one of the few initial mediums where people used to people used to paint on the caves and translate their hunting stories and propagate knowledge through that. And over a period of time, the purpose of storytelling has changed a lot. I mean, right from passing on cultural values, passing on traditions, passing on knowledge, to what have we come today? So we are here at a short story format, which is a 10-second format in the digital space, wherein it's a quick, very fast moving pace, and literally we are talking in terms of seconds of storytelling. So is there something that has changed over a period of time? Like when the time is warped, the time is contracted, has it affected anything? Or what is it that makes stories unique, and what is it that makes stories stand out? So the fundamentals for some story to stand out, or what makes the story great story, they remain the same. So I've referred. So there are a lot of fundamentals. A lot of people have. There's a lot of literature behind this. So, but when I was studying, I came across this one framework when Pixar introduced some 22 random things that can make a story a great story. Out of which I think I could focus on 6 rules, which are important for making a story a great story. So the first one is great stories are universal. It simply means that most of the stories end up being great, which end up being great, are about the typical normal things that humans experience in their life, which is birth, growth, emotionality, aspiration, conflict, death. So these are like very generic things, and great stories are actually about these things. Second is great stories have a clear structure and a purpose. So when we talk about structure, so this is a sample that can be used as a structure, which says once upon a time there was a dash. Every day something used to happen dash. One day something unique happened, because of which some sequence of events got triggered until finally the climax. So this is one sequence, one kind of a structure that Pixar has given. Along with this, there are many other kind of structures that are established. Great people like Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey, which is a monomyth, that is also a reference structure which can come up in a storytelling format. And great stories also have a purpose. So, 3 questions that you need to ask yourself before you choose a story is: why must you tell the story? What is the intent? What is the purpose behind this story, that particular story that you have chosen? What is the belief burning within you that the story, your story feeds off? Like, what do you really believe in the story, which will really make the story great? And of course, what is the larger purpose to whatever you are trying to say? I mean, does it really have something that has got to be told to a larger mass, and it has a purpose that can serve betterment to the society, or anything, any message that you want to give across? Third thing is, good stories have a character to root for, an underdog. So typically, most of these stories that become famous have a central character who rises from ashes like a phoenix. So who is who is um, who is somebody who struggles a lot. So Pixar explains that we as audience admire a character for trying more than ever for their success. So it's more about the journey than the actual destination for the main character. Fourth thing is, great stories appeal to our deepest emotions. We as humans are governed by emotions. I mean, everybody would agree to that, right? So happiness, surprise, anger, disgust, fear, sadness, very basic emotions that we as humans have. And great stories often emphasize on these emotions, and they take advantage of these emotions to make their plot and the structure and the characters that they have. A very great example is one of Pixar's own films, which is Inside Out, which actually personifies all these feelings. If you can check it out, it's amazing. That film, an animation film. So the fifth thing is, great stories are surprising and unexpected. So anything that challenges the typical norms, the way people think normally, is generally taken into. It may or may not be supported, but most of the times people like something which is offbeat, something which is uncommon, because it makes them challenge their own perception and thinking. So that's like, those are like five things, five points, 5 or 6 actually, but 5 points which will sort of make your inventory full for before you start writing for a story. But we are talking about students right here. So what happens when, even if you know the structure, even if you know Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, what typically happens for students is this. So they start, and then there is a huge lot of randomness, and they get lost because of simple things, that it's quite difficult at that in that phase to understand and actually replicate and model the structure and create everything according to that, because most of the creative process that happens at the age when you're a student, or at the time when you're student filmmaking, it's very random. Like ideas keep coming in spurts, and there is no chronology to them. So it doesn't make it, in fact takes a lot of logical effort to get things into order. And to add to that, there is a lot of distraction around you. So eventually what happens is this: deadlines, other course assignments, and creative block. So this is something where you end up getting a little demoralizing even before you start writing your own story, the story that you want to tell it to other people or make it into a film. So here the entire process that we are talking about is a story writing for the purpose of making film. So we have like deadlines that come up, we have other assignments, coursework and assignments, and we also have certain, sometimes we may also get into creative block. So how to deal with that? So there are certain things that when I started experimenting and researching a lot for story writing, and especially during my course at IIT Hyderabad, which is called as Moving Images, and Ek Cup Chaha was an outcome of a coursework that I did during the same coursework, Moving Images. So Ek Cup Chaha was an assignment for the course, and during that time I tried a lot of things. I failed doing a lot of things, and I also faced all these frustrations and blocks and everything. And perpetually I would be late, giving away my deadlines, and not being able to do things on time and stuff like that. So but I've just listed down certain things that I also did at that time, which helped me to eventually funnel down all the possible options of the story, and come to one story which I thought was promising. So first is, this is probably one of the most important things that I did, was reflection. It also includes many things like introspection. Like you can introspect within yourself, you can try to get deeper within you. May sound a little over the board or on a spiritual level, but sometimes meditation and things like these really help when you want to dig through your past and find out those meaningful life changing experiences, because every individual has a unique life, right? So whatever they experience is very unique to them, and it holds great potential for those feelings and those experiences to become into meaningful narratives ahead. So you could also retrospect and think about all the things that have happened in your recent past. Next thing that you could do is an extensive literature review. And by literature review, I mean is look for references, read a lot. Reading really helps, because when you try to read, you are actually going through the thought process of various authors which are there. You are actually sitting in their shoes, trying to understand what is their writing pattern, what is their narrative pattern, and trying to understand many things, as opposed to being biased by just your own style. So it just implies the whole ideation process and the design process that we really talk about, right? It aids the ideation process. When you do literature review, it sort of busts a lot of myths, it opens up a lot of doors. So you can also like read a lot of articles and research scholarly articles written by like really good people out there who have done like immense work in this domain. One more thing that you can definitely do is a visual survey. And by visual survey, I mean is what I mean in simple language is watch as many films as possible. And whereas the second part of this is more important, which is write down the things that you liked and disliked about them in depth. Like pick up every point that you noticed about the film, and every nuance of the film, whether it is a scene, it is a shot, it is song, music, anything that you felt was odd, but write it to the depth. Because when you try to do that, what you will end up doing is you'll end up analyzing a lot of things that you will otherwise miss it when you're watching a film as an audience. Because the when you're watching a film as an audience, right, you are in a different immersive mode, And when you're watching a film as a filmmaker, you are looking at the film as an object of art, and you are actually trying to break it into its very own constituents and understand how all these constituents are linked together and they function together. So this is probably one of the most initial scripts that I had written for Ek Cup Chaha. So like I said, right back then, I probably did not know how to apply frameworks of different narrative styles and storytelling. What I did was a very crude attempt of just writing whatever comes to my mind. So after like writing like say 7 to 8 different kinds of narratives and getting frustrated and getting like overwhelmed, saying that, oh my god, I'm not able to write anything else. So one day I was just thinking that, okay, let's just go to our mentor and talk to him about the block that I'm having. And that is exactly when he mentioned this one thing which stuck to my head, which is like which I just mentioned 2 minutes back also, but just to reiterate the fact that every individual has very unique experiences that they have, right? I mean, every person faces certain events of life which are life altering, and which leave a mark on them, and they also shape the way they think, the way they grow, and the way they also interact with other people around you. So it was one fine night I was having a phone conversation with a very close friend of mine, and uh, I stumbled upon this one memory that I had, and I tried to sit with it and extrapolate it. And the reason I have titled this slide as immersive writing is because at that point when I was sitting for writing the story or the script, because I don't know if I should call it the story or the script, because Ek Cup Chaha was eventually a conversation, just a conversation. So I have just put a story slash script there. So so that night when I started writing this entire script, I did not have any inhibitions with respect to, okay, this is the kind of structure that I want to put it in, this is the kind of time frame that I'm looking at, and this is the kind of characters that I'm looking at. No, I just try to remember what was happening, and I just try to remember the sequence of events, and I went on and on writing. So that's why immersive, because I was trying to get into the entire mood of the whole event that had happened. And because I think at that time I did not really think a lot about what the language the film would be or the narrative would be, so I just wrote it in Hindi. If you see the it's English but in Hindi transliteration. So so I just wrote it. I just wrote an entire 2, 3, or 4, 5 pages of conversation that I had, and after this, I went on ahead with what the entire narrative was, or what the whole story was supposed to be. So it was supposed to be a subset of this entire part. So this is one tool that maybe most of the students who are trying to venture into filmmaking, they can actually sort of take make use of, wherein you're not just restricting to the topic that you are thinking, but you are also writing some extra things along with it. And when you are done with it, when you are satisfied with the piece of writing that you have done, you come back to the piece and then you read it again, and then you take the knife and cut the extra parts and edit it and just boil it down to that one small crux of the story that you really want to take ahead into your pre-production and production, and so on and so forth. So we can we'll now quickly go for the screening. So we can now see the film. So it's just a 3-minute film. So I will be screening the film right now, and we can watch the entire film and come back to the second half of the talk. Yeah. So do let me know if the audio, if you're able to hear it. Um, if you're not able to hear it, I'll play it back again. Yeah.
चहाचं भांड कुठे आहे? हो.
अरे रॅकवर असेल बघा.
कुठे? रॅकवर कुठे?
दुसऱ्या कप्प्यात. पप्पा तुम्ही रात्री 3 वाजता मला भांडे शोधायला लावू नका आता प्लीज. आलो.
कुठे? मला जरा दाखव.
हे काय इकडेच तर आहे.
एक कप चहा बनव ना आता आलास तर.
ए काय तुम्ही?
तुझं पण एक्झाम आहे उद्या, मला पण यायचं. भांड धुतलंय की नाही बघते अगोदर.
हो धुतलंय.
हे पाणी घे. गॅस लाव.
मग ताईने रिपोर्ट्स आणले का? जाणार होते ना ते हॉस्पिटलला?
हो आणले ना. एक गोष्ट विचारू तुला.
हा बोला.
चहाला चव कशाने येते रे?
चहापत्तीने.
चहा बनवल्यानंतर पत्तीचं काय करतात?
काय करतात? टाकतात. असं काय बोलताय तुम्ही?
आपलं आयुष्य हे एक कप उकडत्या चहासारखंच असतं आणि एका वेळानंतर त्यातल्या या पत्तीला त्यापासून वेगळं व्हावंच लागतं. माझा एक कप चहा आता संपायला आणि तुला तुझा चहा आता बनवायचा स्वतः.
Okay, so is my screen back to the presentation?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you. So that was the short film Ek Cup Chaha that I made when I was in college about it. So having said that, now we can go ahead for the second part of the talk, which talks more about the experimental animation or the animation techniques that I've used and the filmmaking process that I have done for this entire Ek Cup Chaha film. So just one or two slides about experimental animation, because it's not exact. Ek Cup Chaha is not exactly completely experimental animation in the strictest sense, because what you're seeing right now on the screen is a glimpse of the entire plethora of what experimental animation can achieve. I mean, it's one of the most versatile things and one of the most versatile techniques, and one of the most expressive techniques for animation, and modern too. Like it's come quite as a, I think it finds its roots in the Dada movement, wherein artists try to rebel against the conventional form of art appreciation, and they try to experiment with everything which was unconventional, and trying to create something which is not literally based on the linear narrative style which conventional storytelling demands. So there are certain characteristics of experimental animation, like abstraction. Like most of the experimental animation is typically abstract in nature. It's more of patterns and more of morphing and a very psychedelic kind of an animation, and it is open to second thing is it has specific non-continuity, which means that it is not linear. There is no sequence of logical events that happen in this kind of experimentative style. And it is also interpretative, as in it's open to interpretation. It's more of artistic in nature. I mean, it's there are great people in the history who who are known for their attempts at experimental animation. Norman McLaren being one great experimental animator, and Caroline Leaf also. These are all National Board of Canada, National Film Board of Canada filmmakers, and they have delved and they have tried to explore this entire realm of experimental animation, and they have tried like n number of different treatments. So by the one most important thing about experimental animation is the kind of materials that are used in experimental animation. There is a variety of it, and there's a beauty in every material, and experimental animation actually tries to harness the potential of every material and its abilities, its various visual characteristics like shape, form, color, texture, all these things. It tries to make use of these things to build sort of a non-linear, but you could say that some people might interpret it as a narrative. It is also a collage of multiple, it could also be a collage of multiple styles. And one more thing that is typically present in experimental animation is the presence of artists. So artist makes himself evident in the films that he is trying to make through the experimental animation. And last but not the least, the emphasis of musicality. Most of the experimental animation films that have been done are void of dialogue, and they are heavily based on music as the building block of their narrative, auditory narrative. So these are certain characteristics of experimental animation. So Ek Cup Chaha is not really completely experimental in that in the strictest sense, but what I did was I tried to inherit some of the aspects of experimental animation, such as abstraction, interpretative form, evolution of materiality, and also musicality. Uh, Multiple styles was on the plate, but over a period of time, I think there were some design decisions that were taken, and we did not go ahead with mixing and matching of styles, which is why I've not indicated it here that I have adopted that particular characteristic in Ek Cup Cha. But out of like the 7 odd characteristics here, around 4 of them were sort of adapted in the whole process of the whole design process of Ek Cup Chaha as a film. So the image that you see here is one of those initial explorations wherein I was playing around with different powder elements to create the animation. And well, I'll come back to that later when we talk about the treatment. So going ahead, so here is one still, Ek Cup from the film Ek Cup Chaha. It's an animated short film, and the medium that utilizes is tea powder on backlit glass, and the technique is stop motion powder animation, and which is also a sort of experimental animation, since it involves usage of materials that are not conventionally used for animation, like traditional animation like hand drawn or computer graphic animation or infographics, 3D animation, etc. So uh, typically, I would be talking about the different stages in which the film was made. So the first stage being the developmental stage and the pre-production stage. And typically, like everyone would know that there are these few steps that you are supposed to do in the development or pre-production, which is story, script, storyboarding, character design, character motion, treatment. And so sound design is something that is generally in the traditional filmmaking. It is done during the post production, not as a pre production. But for Ek Cup Cha, I took up sound design as a part of the pre production, and I'll come back to it later when in the slides which are coming ahead. Um, yeah, so this is the first draft of the storyboard that I had done for Ek Cup Cha. Generally, there are different ways in which students are taught to make the storyboard, one of which being drawing blocks on paper. But I chose to actually cut those pieces and make like small cue cards and make the entire story on top of them, because it just helps me to rearrange in case I want to change the sequence of events or omit a scene, so I don't have to erase or cancel out and make the entire storyboard shabby. So I like it modular. So I try to make the entire storyboard into these small placards and small cue cards, and placed them on the wall. And well, the story is not exactly the one that happens here in the storyboard, because this was one of the initial drafts. Later on, as time went, I did a lot of improvisations. I removed some scenes, I added more scenes, and this storyboard was then completed at the later stage. But unfortunately, I don't have an image of the entire storyboard, because someone back there threw away some papers in college. So I lost all these papers that I had. Anyway, then I moved to the character development. So one thing that was extremely difficult for me is to start animation, because I'm not from an art background, or I'm not that skilled in drawing. Um, so it was a challenge to keep the characters very minimal, so that I'm able to make them move, understand the motion and the dynamics of their body. So one direct feedback, or one direct suggestion given by my mentor was that, Sumit, you try to keep the characters very easy, because you're not familiar with, or you're not familiar with animation as well. So before making Ek Cup Chaha, I had a certain experience of animating, but not illustrating and animating. I was into a part wherein a group animation film called Ankahi, in which I did the direction part of it, and sound design and sound editing part of it. But this was the first time I was actually venturing into illustrative animation and character design, and the exact the art behind the animation. So it was overwhelming, and it was also quite challenging for me to decide what should be the look and feel of the character. And so I tried to have a lot of simple smiley faces which I can draw and animate, because by this, when I was trying to make the character, I had no clue about the kind of treatment that I'm going to use. So when I made these sketches, I was only just drawing and experimenting with the shapes and styles, forms of different characters, and just trying to get a hang of what the motion would be, or how the expressions would be, what would be the profiling of the character, and stuff like that. So first character was called Pappu in the film, and the second character was called Papa. So like you can see, right, the drawing quality is not that great. I'm not really very good at drawing, or anatomy, or the strictest form of illustration. So I needed something which is simple, which is easy to bend, move, morph in whatever that I'm trying to do. So I tried making these simple paper GIFs to understand the motion, and then I moved on to the digital medium and tried to understand how the character looks in the digital brushstroke, and whether it is actually giving the same look and feel as what the pencil strokes are giving, and all those things. Then comes the part wherein me and my mentor were discussing about what should be the treatment, whether it should be a hand-drawn animation, whether it should be 2D, 3D animation, or what should be the. So I was hell-bent on this kind of a watercolor treatment back then. I remember having this conversation with him, saying that no, I want to do this. I want to make these drawings colorful, and use these kind of characters that you are seeing on the screen right now. So one direct feedback was, and which was one of the most important feedbacks that I have received during the design process, was that uh, watercolor treatment does not really, and specifically watercolor plus colorful treatment, like multiple hues in the watercolor domain, will not justify the kind of mood that my story demands. So you've seen the film right now. I hope you've tried to understand, or the film was able to communicate what the mood was. So the whole point of doing the film in watercolor and making it colorful would probably defy or make the impact less in terms of the mood and the overall immersion on the emotional level for the film. So, which is why my mentor suggested to me that no, I should try something which is a little more monotone. And on the other side, of course, the more the colors, the more difficult it is for the animation process to happen. Like whoever does animation would definitely understand that coloring every frame is a task, and it is time consuming. So he suggested that I should go for something which is a little monochrome and sepia or something. So next thing that he suggested, okay, I also in between. So this is where the mixed medium comes into picture, right? The one of the characteristics of the experimental animation, which was different types of treatments merging together like a collage. So when I was exploring the treatments after watercolor, I also experimented with live action footages. So you can see here, these are some photographs of the scene. We had gone for recce. We took some shots of the X-ray and some other random shots of the house, and the whole idea was to morph this real world into the animated world and create some sort of a mixture on that. But and that's also one photo of one of our professors who was generous enough to let me come to their house in the campus and do the shoot. And that's my friend Dikshit. He also helped me in taking the entire shoot, the live action shoots which we shot there. So but somehow over a period of time it just didn't feel as what I had imagined it to be like. So eventually I dropped this idea of merging live action and powder anime, or live action and any other sort of animation that I was supposed to take. So I stumbled upon these two films which used the powder animation technique, powder stop motion animation technique for their animation. The Owl Who Married a Goose, it's a film by Caroline Leaf, and Chai Break, it's a film from NIT students. Both these films are available on YouTube. If you want, you can just search by the name and have a look at them. Brilliant films. They are exceptionally done. After watching these films, I sort of understood from where the whole monochromatic thing and the sepia look and everything came into my mentor's mind, because it sort of gave that kind of a feel which was more suitable towards what this kind of story Ek Cup Chaha holds. So I decided that yes, this is the kind of the treatment that I want to go ahead with. Because then I chose the powder treatment, and um, I actually wanted to do it with sand, but I could not find sand on the campus of IIT Hyderabad. So if you know, IIT Hyderabad is a barren land of red soil, so it's very difficult to find sand there. So I was in a way sort of compelled to think what are the other ways in which I can still achieve powder animation. So I tried using sawdust. I tried using some red soil also, some loose red soil, fine red soil, but it was not giving that kind of. I was not able to morph or move anything on the light box and create a sequence of frames to achieve a motion. So eventually I went back to the story, and I thought why not, the film is about tea, why not use the tea powder to make the powder animation itself. It will also add like an added layer of meaning to the entire film in general. So the film is about tea. It's a metaphorical approach, or a euphemistic metaphorical approach towards life using the tea process of tea making, and it is also made using the tea powder. So it all then suddenly started falling into the place, right? I mean, then I sort of intuitively started to understand that okay, things are started to start falling in the right place. So I went ahead with the tea powder treatment, and I then finally illustrated my characters on the light box. So this is the final character of Pappu. So it's illustrated using the tea powder on the light box, and this is the character of Papa, who is sort of brushing Pappu's hair right now. So few challenges while making these entire artworks was that understanding the whole concept of depth and perspective in the kind of environment that I'm trying to create here, right? It's very challenging because the primary constraint being the skill level that I had while illustrating these characters. I had to stick to the most easiest possible visualizations of the house, of the rooms, of the place where these characters are sitting, and not multiply on the details that I want to show, because the more number of elements present on the screen, the more efforts in animating every single element. And I think over a period of time I realized that it was not needed at all. The film was supposed to be simply a conversation between two people, and anything more than that would have deviated the film from its spine, which was the conversation, and I really wanted the focus to be on that thing. So I decided that let's not go into very illustrative, very detailed environments in this kind of a setup, and I'm just going to use like very simple drawings and try using simple movements and create the entire scenes one after the other. So moving on to the next thing, which is the sound design part of it. This was also one of the most interesting things because, as I said, I did the sound design before in the pre-production, and I got the entire conversation recorded, and then I counted the frames for the conversation, like every sentence, every dialogue, how much duration is being spent, and I counted the frames. Frame rate was 12 FPS. My stop motion was on 2s. So I had to illustrate 12 different frames for illustrating 1 second of animation, and every frame was repeated twice, so 24 fps, which is the normal frame rate. So on that calculation I could figure out, okay, if I have a dialogue, then there is what is the amount of time that is spent to say this one particular word in this dialogue, and that on that time I then divided and I got the frame count, and after I got the frame count, then I actually made all these dubbing movements and all those things for animating the characters. So I'll just play. So just for the record, both the voices that you have heard, the voice of Pappu and Papa, both are mine. They are all pitch varied in the software Adobe Audition, and I tried to tweak the voice quality and make the sound of Pappu a little weaker and Papa a little hoarser. But the bass voice is mine. So I'll quickly play the bass voice. So this is my bass voice, which you are hearing right now when I'm speaking. This is the voice of Pappu that is one pitch lower, and I tried one more variant to see if I can match a child's voice. Yeah. So this was the second variant wherein the pitch was a little more thinner, but it eventually started sounding funnier. So I think I went with the first deviant only. Then moving on to the voice of Papa. So this was the first iteration. And this was the second iteration. So likewise, I actually tried not just two, but multiple iterations of voice tonality of the voice to understand what suits the character that I'm trying to do. And these are some rough cuts. So I didn't really know what this thing is called back then, but right now, having read about it, it is called a dope sheet in the formal language, wherein you try to calculate the frames and you try to understand what should be done for every between every keyframe, and how should you adjust the voice and falana falana. So this is one sentence that I wrote, and I counted the number of frames that are required for say banav tuja पण exam आहे उद्या. So every word will say here banav takes 7 frames, banav takes 8 frames because of the tonal deviation. So like that, I counted all the frames, and then and these ellipses that you see here, ellipse dash ellipse, this is the shape of the mouth, which is a different shape for A, E, I, O, U, which are the 5 vowels. So B, N, V will have as 3 shapes, and O is this one ellipse. So that's how I figured out the dubbing the mouths of these characters. So while they are talking, while they are actually saying the sentence on the screen. More examples of the same. Apologies for the shabby image, but back then I just didn't know what was the right way in which you are supposed to document this. But these are some rough cuts or rough pages which I still have preserved of the days when I was making the film. So moving on to the production and the post-production. So this is the act of actual filmmaking, wherein I first took it's a stop motion film, right? So these are essentially all photographs which are composited one after another and timed using a software, and a layer of music or a layer of audio is added on top of that to composite the whole film as a unit. So I captured all the photographs, and the photography design, everything was done using a Nikon D50 camera, and I used a 24 lens for it. And it was mounted on a 90-degree horizontal tripod on top of the light box. The ISO level was 200 and shutter speed was 1/6 and aperture was 8. And I captured a lot of photos. And when you're trying to make this kind of a stop motion animation, it's nice if you have a batch processing software, something like Adobe Lightroom and Adobe Photoshop, to process these all these bulk frames at once. So I might have illustrated somewhere around 4,000 to 4,500 frames, of which for the film around 2,500 frames were finally used, and rest of them were eliminated in the editing process, or they were frames which were error frames. A lot of mistakes that happened during that time. And I used Adobe Premiere Pro to time those frames one after another. And for the sound effects, I used the YouTube Sound Library, which is a very good resource for all the student filmmakers, a free resource. You can go on the YouTube Sound Library and check for free clips that you can use in your production. And other things, all the other dialogues and everything, I used my iPhone to record it, the inbuilt voice recorder for that. So
Sumit, I just want to interrupt. Uh, so you have 5 minutes more for the presentation due to short of time, and then we will take questions from the audience. All right.
Yeah. So I'll quickly show one GIF of how the whole film was made. Yeah, so that's me illustrating on the light box. So after the production, you have some more things that you're supposed to do definitely for the film, which is design the promotional material. So the filmmaking process does not really end at exact completion of the film, but there's a lot that happens after the film is completed its production stage, which is you have to make the posters for different kind of promotional materials and Instagram promotion. So I did this entire Instagram promotions wherein I made these GIFs and I uploaded on Instagram stories to catch attention, and then released the film online for people. So one thing to also remember is that when you finish the film is on shelf for 1 year. That is, most of the film festivals that you will be sending the film for, they would lock up your film and for a year, and after which you can release it for public viewing. So just one quick slide about certain to-dos if you are a student filmmaker and you want to enter into the entire film festival industry, film festival scene. So there are some 7-8 things that you need to take care of. One is the date of completion of the film screening footage, typically H.264, MP4, 1080p resolution. These are widely accepted formats across various national and international film festivals. Most importantly, student validity certificate, film synopsis, which is a small description of what the film is without revealing the entire plot. Then the director, filmography, biography, photograph, and if it's a team, then some team photographs. Promotional materials, like you saw in the earlier slides. And most importantly, the financing part of it, that most of the film festivals that you would be entering require some sort of a entry fee to it. So who's going to pay for that? So some key learnings that I have had in my entire experience with Ek Cup Chaha is that first and foremost, rather than the grandeur of the concept, the completion of the film matters if you're a student and you're trying to make a film. Secondly, finances and budgeting should be given utmost importance, because it all depends on how much money you have, what is the kind of how much you can stretch on the treatments that you can afford for the film. And if you feel the story is worth it, go for it and finish it anyhow, because it eventually, like, it bears fruits, and trust me, it does. And last and the least, not the least, not all film festivals are authentic, so do your background check. I've burnt my fingers. I've lost a lot of money in film festivals that are actually scams. So do your background checks, and then only try and enter into the film festival. So that's about the talk, and here are some things that some of my social media handles, if you want to reach out to me and talk more about things that I've shared today. I am available on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and many other social networking places. My name is unique enough. You can just type it and you will probably find my profile. So yeah, thank you all for listening. Yeah, Ankana, I mean, I think I'm done here.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Sumit. Thank you very much. It's a wonderful presentation and such a beautiful movie you displayed today. So we have a couple of questions that were offline also and online also. We got. So so I just I'm curious to know that when you work with the story, scripts, character design, and all these things are part of the story development. But when you work with such kind of sensitive piece, like your personal story or some bits of your life journey, so what happens to the actual emotions and the feelings when you come to the end of your this whole animation project or the story or movie making maybe?
Yeah, it does. Can you come again? I think I lost in between.
Yeah, so actually, when you do, you work with your personal journeys, like the story, script writing, and then so much design process happens in between, like the design development and working with the character design. So, what happens with the actual feeling and the emotion you have attached with that, particular movement when you work with such kind of, topics?
Okay, yeah, good question. I think in terms of am I audible? Yeah, yeah. In terms of
Yeah.
art, I think it's called catharsis. The whole process wherein, because because this particular experience of my life was a little emotional and heavy on terms of emotions. So when I was doing the whole film, I was going through every moment that happened during that time, and it just helped me process those moments, um, and I think I got a lot of clarity of why things happened, and so basically the whole process actually made things a lot more clearer, and I started respecting time and valued life more when I started addressing all these emotions and pulling them into the design process and making some tangible thing out of it. And most importantly, it's not just me, but when the film was out, a lot of people personally reached out to me, and they shared that the film really touched them. People whom I don't know, random people reached out to me, and they said that the film was. Some people did not even understand Marathi, but they were able to make sense of what was going on in the film, and that was, I think, a success point for me, wherein I thought that okay, if people are able to identify to the kind of emotions that I've had, and I've tried to then maybe do justice with the film. So that's about it.
So another question is, when you work on such experimental piece, so there is always scope of change, and there might be you feel that you are lacking somewhere or these kind of things. So when you decide ki the movie has to be finished now, or this is finally ready piece that can go out in the public,
Okay.
when is that moment,
One
and
direct
how you
answer
decide
would
that?
be, yeah, one direct answer would be the deadline. I mean, typically that's the most dreaded thing any person would be like. But apart from the deadline, I think what is important is the fact that you should understand whether your literature review or the kind of understanding that you have of the concept, is it enough for you to only do the crux of it. Like I said, in the immersive phase, right, you tend to lose track of what exactly is the part that you need to focus on. So you need to come back and understand, and so basically this is the feedback loop in the design process, wherein you go back to the ideation phase, you go back and you understand, okay, let me go back and understand which is the exact point of focus that I want to come in. So that calibration helps you to bring your focus back, and then put a hard stop on the ideation phase, and go ahead and put a full stop on the design process, and say that okay, let's just go ahead with what we have done right now.
Great. So we have one question from Hitesh Sharma. So his question is: I'm a freelancer artist. I have seen in titling part there is lot of film festival icons visible. So how to find film festival application, how to apply, is there any one platform available?
Okay, so there are multiple platforms actually, but one of the most widely used platform is Film Freeway. You can actually go to Film Freeway. I'm not endorsing Film Freeway, but it's one thing that I know and I've been using. So Ek Cup Chaha was submitted to around say roughly 100 festivals via Film Freeway, which is why I also mentioned that one very important point, that when you are trying to submit a film to the film festival, or do your background check of the festivals thoroughly, because there are a lot of scam festivals out there, which really, they will take money from you and then the festival will never happen. So I've burnt my fingers, and right now this is one advice that I would like to give is, if you're venturing into film festivals and all those things, then definitely do your research and get and there's ample data on the internet available as to which festivals are known, which festivals are renowned, and which festivals are legit. So do that kind of a background check and then only apply for those festivals.
Then one more question is there. So this might be the last question. That Siddhant want to know that in your presentation you mentioned that so he was saying this question is from a presentation, that challenging conventions conflict with structure. So would you like to?
Yeah. So the convention part here does not really imply on the structure of the structure part of the story. It's not about the skeleton or the way the story is told. It is generally about the topics that are talked about in the narrative. So the challenging conventions is more towards what is the crux of the matter, like what is the matter which forms the narrative, not the way the narrative is woven. It could also sometimes mean the way the narrative is woven. Like for an instance, Tarantino films have a very particular non-linearity and concurrency in their narrative. So there is a reason why they are famous, right? It also challenges the conventional linearity and storytelling, but it also has a structure even in that non-linearity. So that's the beauty part of it, wherein you have to understand these nuances and choose what is right for your kind of story. So I think I am of an opinion where the story is the precursor to what is the kind of narrative, the treatment or the structure that you are going to choose, as opposed to the structure or treatment defining what the narrative should be.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any other question? Cool, then I think we can wind up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sumit, for joining us today.
So thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to thank ADI, Ankanadi, and everybody who have attended this talk. It means a lot for me. Thank you. And do share the film with your friends and family if you like it. It's there available on YouTube. And if you want to reach out to me, you can. I've shared my credentials. You can just search my name anywhere. You will probably find only one profile with the same name.
Go ahead, Ankana.
Okay, thank you, Sumit, for giving your time and for sharing your story, your personal story, as well as your design journey with all of us, and clarifying questions of many students. So we would like to have you here sometime again, with more stories, more news stories and animations.
Definitely. Thank you.